You sign your name on a clipboard at 6 p.m. because if you're not in line by 6, the bed is gone. Someone else gets the mat, the blanket, the 4 walls. You've learned this the hard way, twice. Tonight you're early. You stand against the wall in a room that smells like bleach and something the bleach didn't fully cover. And you wait for your number to be called like it's a name. A staff member reads a list off a clipboard, 19 names before yours. You count the chairs, and there aren't 19 chairs. So some of these people are already standing, already waiting the way you're waiting. Your name gets called, you get a bed, a locker with no lock, and a rule sheet stapled together. Lights out at 10. No exceptions. You lie on the mat and listen to a man 3 beds down cough in a rhythm you've started to recognize. 4 coughs, then quiet, then 4 more. Nobody complains. Complaining uses energy nobody has left. You stare at a water stain on the ceiling, shaped like nothing in particular, and think about the apartment you had 2 years ago, the one with the water stain you actually complained about, back when complaining was a thing you were allowed to do. In the morning you fold the blanket into a square, because the sign says to, and because folding it feels like the only decision left. That's yours. You walk to a job center that opens at 8, and you're there at 7:15 because the shelter kicks everyone out by 7:30, and there's nowhere else to be. A woman behind a desk asks for an address so she can mail you information. You give her the shelter's address and watch her pause, just slightly before she writes it down. The pause says everything her face doesn't. Level 2, the room. You have 4 walls that lock now, 1 window, a hot plate you're not supposed to use but do anyway. 240 square feet, and it's the biggest thing you've owned since the apartment. The building has a landlord you've met twice, both times about money. The pipes bang at night, a sound like something trying to get in. You've stopped hearing it as a threat. It's just the building talking, same as the man down the hall who talks to himself at 2 a.m. Same as the woman upstairs whose television never turns off. You know these sounds the way you used to know traffic outside your old apartment. Familiarity doesn't make it comfortable. It just makes it survivable. You work 2 jobs now, 6 days most weeks. The landlord raises the rent $40 and doesn't explain why, doesn't have to. You don't ask. Asking costs something you can't spend. The tenant before you asked too many questions and got a notice instead of an answer. You learn the difference between a good week and a bad week by how many days are left before the 15th, when rent is due, and whether the number in your account gets there first. A pipe bursts in the unit below yours. Water comes through your floor at the corner near the window. You call the landlord 4 times over 3 days. On the 4th call, he answers and says he'll send someone next week. Next week, the stain is still there, dried into a shape you now know as well as the one on the shelter ceiling. You realize the building doesn't care whose name is on the lease. It only cares whose name is on the deed, and that name isn't yours, and it isn't going to be anytime soon. Not at this rate. Not doing the math you keep doing at 1 a.m. with a calculator app and a number that refuses to move. Level 3, the apartment. Real furniture now, bought slow, piece by piece, nothing matching but all of it yours. The landlord here is a company, not a person, which somehow feels better and worse at once. Better because nobody forgets to call you back out of spite. Worse because there's no one to blame, just a portal you submit requests through, and a status that reads pending for 6 days before it reads resolved. You've saved enough to stop flinching at the mailbox. The eviction notices you used to brace for at other addresses don't come here, not because the building is kinder, but because you pay on time, and paying on time is the only relationship this building understands. You fix your own leaky faucet on a Saturday with a wrench you bought yourself, and it feels like a small rebellion, doing for $2 what the portal would have charged you a service fee to ignore for a week. A neighbor mentions buying a starter home in a suburb 40 minutes out. You do the math that night without meaning to. Down payment, closing costs, a mortgage that would be less than what you're currently paying in rent. If you had the down payment, which you don't, not yet, but the gap has a number now, and a number is something you can move toward. It's the first time owning anything with a roof on it has felt like arithmetic instead of a fantasy. Level 4, the starter home. Small, a single bathroom, a yard the size of a rug. But the mortgage statement has your name on the deed line, and you read that word 4 times the first time it arrives. Deed, not lease. Deed. Something in the house breaks, the water heater, and you're the one who calls the plumber, and you're the one who pays. And there's a strange freedom in that bill that a rent complaint never had. This cost is yours to solve, not survive. You paint a wall a color nobody approved but you, and standing back to look at it, you understand for the first time what people mean when they say a place feels like theirs. The property tax bill arrives and you flinch briefly, the old reflex from the room with the pipes. Then you remember the number is smaller than what a landlord used to raise your rent by in a single unexplained notice, and the flinch fades into something calmer. A neighbor mentions the property value went up 8% this year. You didn't do anything for that 8% except live there, and it's the first time the math has ever worked in your direction without you sweating for it. Level 5, the duplex. You bought the second unit as an investment, and now someone else's rent check covers most of your mortgage. The tenant calls about a broken faucet, and you feel something unfamiliar rise in you before you catch it. The landlord's sigh. The reflex you swore you'd never have. You catch yourself and call the plumber the same day, because you remember exactly how a 4-day wait feels from the other side of that call. You sit down to do the math on a Sunday, and the math is different now. Not survival math, growth math. 2 units, one rent covering the mortgage, the other rent becoming, for the first time in your life, actual profit that isn't tied to an hourly wage. You still flinch at big repair bills, but you flinch the way someone flinches at an expense, not the way someone flinches at a threat. Level 6, the small building. 6 units now, a property manager who handles the calls you used to make at midnight from a room that smelled like bleach. You've never met most of your tenants. You know them through a spreadsheet instead. Rent paid, rent late, maintenance requested, maintenance closed. It's strange, this distance, and you notice yourself wondering sometimes whether one of the late payment names on that spreadsheet is sitting somewhere doing the same 1 a.m. math you used to do, watching a number refuse to move. A tenant's pipe bursts. Your property manager handles it same day. No 4-day wait, no unanswered calls, because you built the systems you once needed and couldn't get. You didn't set out to become the landlord who answers the phone. It just turned out that remembering the wait was the only thing standing between you and becoming the version you used to complain about. Level 7, the building. 40 units. The whole structure with your name on the ownership documents. The same kind of building you once lived in on the 3rd floor with a hot plate you weren't supposed to use. You walk through it sometimes, not to inspect, just to remember. A tenant in Unit 3B mentions the shelter 3 blocks over. Mentions it like it's a fact about the neighborhood, and not a memory that still visits you at 2 a.m. some nights. The cough count, the water stain, shaped like nothing. You don't tell her you used to sign a clipboard at 6 p.m. to get a mat on a floor a mile from where she's standing. Some things aren't for sharing at a lease signing, but you fix the boiler that week before anyone complains, because you know exactly what a broken heater sounds like in December when nobody's coming to fix it. And you built this so nobody in this building would have to know that sound the way you did. Somewhere tonight, someone is signing their name on a clipboard at 6 p.m., hoping their number gets called before the beds run out. They'll fold a blanket into a square in the morning because it's the only decision left that's theirs. They don't know yet that the building sees you differently depending on what column your name sits in, tenant, buyer, owner, and that the sound of a broken pipe is the same sound at every level. Only who answers the call changes. You are the same person at every address. The building just decides who you are based on whose name is on the deed.